Good evening and welcome to the Council Advisory Meeting of November 10th, 2025. This meeting is being live streamed on the Town of Kentville's YouTube channel. I call this meeting to order. The chair notes we do have quorum, but we do have regrets from Councillor Hamilton this evening. I respectfully acknowledge that we are in the traditional and unceded land of the Mi'kmaq people. We honor their deep connection to this land, past, present, and future. And I also recognize and honor the contributions and heritage of African Nova Scotians whose ancestors have shaped and enriched this community for generations. Do we have any conflict of interest issues we should be made aware of before the meeting commences tonight? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a conflict with 8C.
8C, okay.
Thank you.
And Councillor Baker.
I have a conflict with the closed section item 8C. No, you were 8C. I'm 8B.
B and C.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We have a proposed agenda in front of us. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Do you still have your light on, Councillor Baker, or no?
No, I Paul.
Okay, no worries. Okay, moved by Councillor Savage and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Kroll. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. We have a set of minutes from the October 10th meeting. Are there any errors or omissions in this set of minutes? There being none, we will file those as presented. We're going to move right on into department reports. I guess we've changed up the order, so planning and development is first this evening. Director Shoup.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Fairly short report to deliver this evening. Off the top, we mentioned that now that the Council has provided strategic priorities, we're integrating that into the plan review process and will help inform our timeline going forward. So we're still aiming to have some sort of timeline for Council by the end of the calendar year, but we'll do our best to get that delivered. In terms of development permits, for the course of October, 16 development permits were issued with estimated construction of just under $1.3 million. There are no site plan approval, no subdivision applications during October. There was a new planning application from Dr. McGregor regarding 153 Belcher Street, where he's looking to rezone the adjacent property to the current dental practice to allow for better accessibility and basically more room at a new structure. So the public participation meeting for that application is November 20th at 4:30 in these council chambers. Overall, some mention with the plan review. Again, we're working with Clean Foundation again to get us up and running as soon as we can with some of the environmental sections of that. And again, we're looking probably in December to have some sort of report pulled together for council to see where, just an update basically where we're at and where we plan to go in the new year. In terms of ongoing applications, we're going to hear about the Bryson one a little bit later tonight as well, so I won't get into that. And we have a couple other applications that are in various stages of the process. The Vita Living Development Agreement, we're still working on some legal aspects of that. The Bell Mobility Tower application from earlier in the summer, we still haven't had any update from them on where that is in the process either, so we're looking for an update. I think fairly soon as they work through that through with the federal government. The VIC is wrapped up for the season as well, so tip of the hat to Christina Kelly and the attendant Sid West for the work that they did over the course of the summer. My understanding is that during Pumpkin People, they experienced very high attendance at the visitor center, and so the extension of their season was well utilized and enjoyed by visitors. And that's the end of my report.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Are there any questions for Director Shoup based on his report? Councillor Andrew.
I do have just a couple of things. One question was if you can tell me the percentage that we're required to pay. So we have a climate action coordinator that's required of us. Mm-hmm. It just is a strange, because you know because the Clean Foundation always strikes me as an odd entity, because it is principally funded by Emera, which is this strange monopoly that our province is in bed with. And so, so it is just, I just wondered if you could tell me how much money do we have to put into that, since it's an obligation?
I would defer to the CAO if you would happen to know what that percentage, I don't off the top of my head, but we can certainly get that information for the council.
Don't know off the top of my head, but it's a small percentage.
It's a small, okay, that's good to hear. And if I can just get clarity with regard to the, I think it was 153 Belcher, so they're looking at building another structure on the same piece of property?
My understanding, and we've seen some concepts for it so far, is that they'd be utilizing the existing structure and extending it and upgrading it for accessibility.
Okay, thank you.
And some of the parking with it that goes along with it as well to accommodate patients.
Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Director. Again, 153 Belcher. Which dental practice is that?
It's Dr. McGregor's, and I'm not sure. Okay, thank you.
Kentville Dentistry? Okay, great, because I think there's two on that street.
Okay. So
And it will stay a dental practice, or just going to upgrade it? Is that right?
they're going to move it next door. My understanding is they're going to move it next door and then figure out what they want to do with the existing property after that point.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The report for Parks and Recreation is in your package. Director Langell couldn't be here tonight, but if there's any questions you want to fire at our CA, go ahead. He did get his start in recreation, so maybe he can answer them. Nobody's laughing. Councillor Maxwell.
Okay, I'll fire the first question here. I noticed that driving by the pool, they still haven't put the pipes in. It's still all dug up, and this is November, and we're going to get into frost pretty soon. And my concern is that frost will set in because the sides of that pool are all exposed, the tank, and we may get some breakage and so on. Do we have any idea when they're going to fill that in? And hopefully it's soon.
No, we do not. I'll check with Director Langell tomorrow.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're off the hook. We'll move on now to Chief Smith from Kentville Police.
Good evening, Mayor, Councillor, CAO, and Jason. You should have the September meeting minutes from our board. Just to touch on, our call volume again was pretty much the same as it was this time last year for the month of September, but having said that, we are higher than we were last year overall this time. So we had a lot of foot patrol activity based on a lot of the issues we're facing downtown. Last month, members spent almost 200 hours walking the beat downtown. So last year was 130, and 130 hours is actually a lot when you actually look at it. Just to touch on a couple of things, I want to thank, we had a presentation here last week for Constable Chelsea Hutley. She's moved on to another career, well, another job with another policing agency. She spent 5 years here with us, and she was a fantastic member, done a lot of great things in Kentville, and just wanted to bring that up to your attention here at the meeting. So I wish her nothing but the best. Last month, we did have 141 of our, this is something we've been tracking based on the issues we've had, but we've had 141 of our 338 calls last month were in our downtown core. Having said that, it's not to say that the downtown core is dealing with everything, all the issues that is in the media that's out there right now. It could be something such as a traffic accident, ticket, but the majority of the calls are dealing with well-being checks, mental health, and Trespass Act. So it works out to roughly 42% of our calls are focused in that downtown area. Some of the training highlights, we actually working in partnership with Nova Scotia GSARC, Ground Search and Rescue. We had one of our members that has one of the best trained dogs in the country, and they paid for his training to go to Manitoba last month and cover any expenses that were associated with that. So we're currently working with them, looking at some avenues how we can work together. GIS and SKU are busy, active search warrants, a couple seizures of cocaine and drug trafficking charges. And we continue to have meetings with stakeholders where we're having our issues and concerns downtown, trying to hopefully come to a solution. It's not gonna be an easy task. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. I'll touch on budgetary, which really there's no issues budget-wise. We're pretty much on pace for the year. We still continue to be ahead of pace for our back check revenue, which is a positive thing, because we're actually running a little short on the staffing-wise for that. Next month, we will be doing, the board chair and myself will be doing a presentation just to give you a heads up on some staffing issues and retention concerns, and bring forth a proposal that we'd like to discuss with council. So just to give you a heads up on that. I presented that at the last board meeting. I think that's pretty much the report. I know there's gonna be questions on the downtown core area, I'm sure of it. If there's not, I'll keep my words.
As soon as you said that, the lights lit up. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, I do have a couple of questions. I noticed that there's quite a drop in criminal code charges between 2024 and 2025. And I know that some of the problems that we're experiencing in the downtown core, like disturbances, disturbing the peace, loitering, vandalism, and so on, would come under criminal code charges. Can we expect to see those rise in the coming months, maybe?
I'd hope that they don't, actually. I hope that there's that those charges are lower, because that means we're doing something right. But the thing is, and I've explained this to councillors, we've had members explain it to the business community. A lot of times when you call in something like a disturbing complaint, okay? If that person isn't willing to go to court or does not want to go to court, then we can't lay it on behalf of them. And a lot of times those are the types of calls that we get. They want to report it, but they don't want to go to that next step and go to court. Loitering, stuff like that doesn't fall under criminal code. It would fall under Protection of Property Act notice, which would be a summary offense ticket.
Okay.
Yeah, so damages, yes, it's been in social media and such, and I'm sure in the business community that we've had 4 broken windows in the downtown core in the last, I'll say 2 to 3 weeks. Charges have been laid on 3 of those incidents, and still looking at the 4th, so.
Great.
Unfortunately, I think probably this time last year, I stood here and said that we got about 5 or 6 individuals that are causing a lot of these heartaches, and now I'd say it's probably more like 12 or 13, somewhere around there. And it's continuous.
Yeah, I'm just from my background in education is if we don't have, clear rules and we're constantly letting people off, then the behaviors never change. And I'm afraid that, if we don't take a kind of a hard hand for, even if it's just a short period of time, that we're going to continue to see those behaviors, and they are going to continue to mount. I'm just wondering also as well, when you talk about walking the beat, are our officers actually walking? Because I've seen a lot of just standing in one location, so.
I mean, obviously I'm not out there with them but I can certainly bring it up. I mean, I would hope there's walking around the downtown core. I know there's certain spots that they like to stand where we have continuous issues, so they're present in those areas. But yeah, I don't know if I haven't heard that from anyone else that they're just standing in one spot, but I can certainly have a look at it.
Yeah, I don't, I'm down there and usually in the morning and in the evening and walking the dog, and I see Harlan walking all the time, but I don't see the officers walking. When I see them, they're chatting with each other, and they're usually in one spot. And that's the same as in the evening. I rarely see them. I did see one sitting in a car just outside here one night, but I've never seen them walking. So maybe just a word.
Sure.
Would be good.
Are you referring to you've never seen them walking at nighttime, or?
During the daytime too.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've never seen me walk around town?
No. So
Really?
maybe I'm not down there at the right time. That could be too.
Yeah.
Counselor Savage.
Okay. My question is more around the Community Crisis Navigator and how applications are coming along for that and how that's looking.
Next week, we'll be doing an interview process for that.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've, unfortunately, with a couple people leaving.
Yes.
My apologies, I forget to mention Alana Marshall, she also left. And
Oh, yes, sir.
took another position with another agency as well. So
Right.
that's, our court administrative position is, so hiring those two,
Yeah.
when we're doing that off the sides of our desk, it slows things down.
It sure would. Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But I personally notice a difference when we don't have that position in place, because I can see the follow-up and follow-through with what's being done with individuals that we continue to follow, to get calls with, so, yeah. Yeah.
Counselor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Chief Smith. I guess that just, your last comment just led right into it. As you mentioned, this time last year, you had 5 or 6 individuals that you could account for troublesome activity, and now it's 12 to 13.
I'd
And
say it's doubled anyway, yeah.
you'd attribute that success, let's call it success, to having a community crisis navigator?
No, that would be hard to say that that's the reason why it went from there. I think just the amount of people coming to the town for the opportunities that are here to get assistance, help, has grown, right? Has grown. And I've said this to many people. I said it to Councillor Andrew earlier. We always used to talk about the wraparound service of having, okay, so if we have policing that deals with them, then we can get them into, whether it be addictions or housing or mental health, whatever it might be. But that's becoming harder and harder to do, to find those resources to continue to help these people.
Because those resources are maximized for our
I
area?
would say they're maximized, yes.
If you'd be so kind, I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
So I believe I read that we're down 3 members, is that accurate?
No, we're
No?
fully staffed right now.
Fully staffed
We're
right now.
fully staffed. We were 1 member above complement.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, I misread that.
Yeah.
And then my follow-up to that would be, I believe, 2021 report on homelessness in Kentville
Yes.
attributed about 50 people to a homeless nature in the community.
I couldn't
Can
quote
you-
on that.
I'm basing that on just what I
Yeah.
read today. Is there an estimate to how many people are living rough in Kentville right now?
Again, I would be misquoting by saying that. It's surely something I could look into and find out, but.
I'd appreciate it.
I don't know when the last survey or report would have been done on that, to be honest, Counselor, so I wouldn't want to misquote that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, I will follow up with you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Good. Thank you.
We'll now invite Director Bell up with Engineering and Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll start with the Kentville Water Commission, as I typically do. And as fall comes to a close, the Public Works and Water Commission crews are completing various operational upgrades, leaky valves, et cetera, prior to the winter freeze-up. And our meter replacement program, Capital Works project, that we started last year, year 1, this is year 2. I mentioned it a few times before. It's set to start very soon, focusing on Palmater, Glenwood, and the older phases of McDougall Heights. And it will require a number of service locates and potential repairs from Public Works as the contractor completes this maintenance or meter replacement program. I'm going to add to what I have written here that the contractor is Neptune Technologies, and they have made first contact with everyone on that list of those subdivisions that I mentioned, and by means, I guess their first contact is through a door hanger or in your mailbox, but it's a skinny piece of paper. And this is more of a PSA, I guess, just anybody listening. Folks have questioned if this is a legit company and that sort of thing. We've had a few calls today and someone dropped in to see me just to make sure that it is for real. And certainly is. And last year we had it on our socials and our webpage, and our comms team is gonna update that, this year. But they start with that sort of first contact and then move to an official letter, which, lets the homeowners know how to book an appointment either by phone or by, their webpage, and it certainly is legit, and we're doing roughly I think it's either 350 or 380 this year in those subdivisions, and then the remaining ones in other parts of town that have older or troublesome meters. Under sanitary sewer service, I guess I will add, we did have a water commission meeting just a week or probably 2 weeks ago now. Nothing eventful coming out of that meeting of last water commission. Under sanitary sewer, no operational updates really or issues this past month. And capital upgrades continue this fall with the county-owned regional system in New Minas to remove sludge and add additional aeration lines. Under our projects portion, start with the grid, which is out here on Main Street from essentially Aberdeen by the liquor store through to Prospect. The pipework portions of this large project are now substantially complete, and the contractor has already completed a large section of curb and sidewalk on the west end. And as of last Friday, the remaining curb is now complete from sort of the town hall corner by Church Avenue through to Prospect. So the sidewalk from Church to Prospect is scheduled to begin later this week, likely the 13th, and take about 4 days to complete. So this final phase of the project will be to mill and pave along this stretch in later this month within the right weather window to put the pavement down. Under the Donald E. Hiltz project, this year's phase of the ICIP-funded Hiltz project is set to wrap up in December. And other than some coordinated water main tie-ins at various spots along the project, the pipework portion is complete, including a new water main linking the business park with the Prospect water system. The new storm infrastructure included environmental box culverts and rock-lined interceptor ditches and stormwater management areas and ponds, and is nearing completion. So the road itself is about 85% complete in this phase. And once this portion is complete, the road will be gated and remain closed to vehicles other than town maintenance equipment until future curbing and paving is completed and it becomes an actual town street somewhere down the road with additional funding, hopefully. So the corridor will be once again truly available as an active transportation route. Remind people it is still a construction zone, and since the woods ban and trail bans have been listed, we have seen more folks in on the trail, but just remind everybody that it is still a construction zone, and certainly should be cautious and really should stay off that corridor with the heavy equipment. Next year's phase will include the replacement of the business park water tank. That will complete the water portion of this project and greatly increase the operational serviceability of this high pressure zone on the high elevations of town, and making certainly the water system as a whole network more reliable and serviceable. The only other item, I guess, is just on stormwater infrastructure maintenance, and most of what we've done this year has been done in-house, and we still have, as we're closing in on paving windows, we do have a few more catch basins to finish, a couple on Park Street, and once they're done, the contractor's going to come in when he's paving here Main Street and finish up some remaining asphalt in those areas. And those are the highlights of my report.
Thank you, Director Bell. Are there any questions based on this report? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is an overlap, I believe, between you, Director Bell, and Director Matthews concerning stormwater management funds that haven't been used. Should I wait for Director Matthews on that? That was her note one. Did I steal your thunder?
Not sure it's in a report. We're talking about that
In the forecast, right?
the forecast, the capital. We did have a placeholder, Councillor, for up to $500,000 of spending, in this year and perhaps even more in future years. We haven't been able to really implement any of the major projects that are highlighted in the Dillon report. We have been successful in the design portion of a funding grant for the east end, which is, the grant was for tidal influenced stormwater issues, and that relates to the Millbrook and area down on the east end, the flats as we call it, and near Millbrook and Crescent Avenue, that was certainly heavily hit during the last few major storm events. A few other projects have been deferred under transportation, which are stormwater related. We're looking at a larger project on Spring Garden Road. We had a project potentially it was in the capital project for this year. We're going to move that to ideally a bigger project. Spring Garden needs a bunch of things. It needs it's one of our few streets in town that doesn't have curbing or continuous storm sewer. And certainly the lower phases require sanitary sewer and water upgrades. And that project we feel is better put together to a larger capital project. And the Mitchell Brook, yeah, that's another big one. The Mitchell Brook culvert crossing, the design is complete for that, but it took between environmental permits and the design, we were well into latter part of August before we had that come back from our consultants and the permits from environment, and the window, it means construction has to be complete by the end of September. So with the design now, we plan to go to tender, thinking the first full week back at least in the new year. Best time of year to tender projects like this is when contractors are ready to book their next season's work. And that permit can carry over to the 26 construction season, and then can be built from June till September. So that culvert system, it'll also give us the opportunity to tender it around the same time that we are setting our budgets for next year's capital project. So I know the 160 I think that we had in there, where is it, Director, 165 for Mitchell Brook, isn't going to touch it. I was a bit shocked by the requirements from environment and the designers that the old crossing is a dual round pipe, and it now has to be a single box with a infilled, half the bottom filled with environmental stone and things, and becomes a massive structure. We're going to have to change water lines and sewer lines and all kinds of things to get it under that. It's both of those lines go over the culverts currently, so it's going to be a bit of a work, and I suspect that budget line will easily double to well over $300,000.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, the other ones were smaller, and we are doing, Prospect is underway right now. That one, certainly the curbing project up on Prospect was a bit of a late start, but it's the curb's nearly complete, and then sidewalk. But it's less about the sidewalk portion and more about the curb that will keep that water out of those few front yards that are on that steep section of Prospect Avenue.
Can I just take you back to Crescent Avenue? You said the
Sure
design's
thing.
been done for that?
No, we received funding or notification of funding here recently. I think hopefully that's public to say, CAO. If it is.
It is now.
Don't know, can't remember actually the percentage, but it covers a good chunk of design work, but the work has not been let out yet to even do the design.
It'll be part of next year's budget.
It'll be, we'll get designs done this winter, and based on what they recommend and what we can find out ideally more funding to do. I'm not sure even what they're going to come up with because of the tidal influences and the potential of the brook or the bridge itself, which has been arguing with the province whether they own it or we do. We say they do, and they say we do, but they used to chase us off that bridge for decades, saying, no, you can't even paint it for apple blossom because it's ours, but yet now they say it's ours, that it needs more work. So we will find out what the recommendations come out of, what can be done to alleviate those problems, and that could be a seawall, it could be all kinds of things, but I'm guessing at this point in time until we have a design.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor, through you to Director Bell. For the Don E. Hiltz connector, the curbing and the paving, do we still have additional funding through? No, we don't.
No, that it was a green infrastructure fund grant.
Right.
It was an ICIP, but
Yes.
focused on green. Did not include curbing and paving, never,
okay.
never did.
Okay.
We are getting, we consider the need to have the road serviceable to a gravel level as part of it, so that part is funded.
Okay.
In order to get at the culverts and the water mains and things, but, no, it would be certainly, I had a number a couple years ago now, need to update it, but it's certainly a few $1 million to finish that.
Okay.
More like 4 or 5 these days with.
And is there any other like grants to that one moving forward that we've been made aware of?
Not that we're made aware of,
Okay.
and hopefully, as
Okay.
CAO mentioned the other day in a meeting, that, the federal budget certainly takes some time in order to even
Sure.
see those grants
Yeah.
come out of,
Disseminate
trickle
some of
down.
those. Yeah. The stormwater management piece, the ponds and the areas that you talk about with the connector, that certainly will be of some advantage to, I would suspect, the properties.
The downstream properties, absolutely.
For sure,
See that,
okay.
even though we haven't had, major events, we've had
No.
some pretty heavy, steady rains and can also already see the benefits.
Oh, wonderful, okay.
That, even the incomplete, ditches and ponds and areas have done,
Yeah.
a big improvement.
Wonderful. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Director Bell.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, to the directors and chief because you were supposed to go first, that's why you did this. The last one. You screwed me all up now. How does it feel to go last?
Strange. I was just up here, so that could have
That's,
fooled you.
no, and the most important one, because no other department works without you funneling the money out, right, so.
Thank you for that. Good
Yeah.
evening, everyone. I have included in my report some narrative along with the statement of operations for the end of Q2, as well as the capital reports showing where we are for actuals and how that relates to spending. I wanted to just highlight a couple of items and then open for questions on any of the detail. From an operating forecast perspective, you will see that we are forecasting at this point, $132,000, about $132,000 surplus. That forecast is based on really favorable scenarios at this point that we're thinking. We've done a detailed analysis on Parks and Recreation as well as revenue at this point, but we haven't done detailed forecasts for other programs. So although it looks favorable, there may be forecasts moving the other way as we continue to refine that with other programs and services, but encouraging to see that we have some savings and decreased spend over the summer for, in particular, summer programs. We also, you will notice that from a capital point of view, our percentage expended will continue to rise up to the end of December. As Director Bell said, most of our major construction projects should wrap up by the end of December with invoicing coming in January. So the amount expended may look a little low, it's around 50%. However, a lot of bills will come in over the next couple of months. The areas of significant under expenditure or deferral have been covered in the last conversation. There's nothing else there that I wanted to point out. As well, our taxes, you will see that we are at a 4.5% of our taxes levied for 25-26 remaining. That is exactly the same as where we were this time last year. Last month, we were at about 6.5%, so that's down 2 percentage points or 31% collection. We do know our first reminder notice is out, so we do see over the next month or so a fair bit of items collected. So that is a positive or neutral or positive trend, which is good. And at our previous meeting, we had approved sanitary sewer rates, and just wanted to make sure that councillors were aware that we have put that announcement up on our website, so people will see that those changes are there with a link back to the package that was sent to council for decision making, and it has been posted on our Facebook page. Our industrial customers who got bills in October would have also received communication right away so that they were aware before their bills came out. And we'll continue to send communication to customers that receive quarterly bills, because they won't see the change until their bill comes out the first week of January, because it's October to December. So just so you're aware that that communication is occurring and will continue to occur up until the point that the next bill is sent out to our customers. Other than that, I am open to any questions on the detailed reports.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Director Matthews? I guess it pays to be last. There's no questions. Thank you
Excellent.
very much.
Thank you.
And thank all of you for your reports and your hard work. So we'll move on now to new business. The first item is traffic calming report, policy 101. This report is in your package. We've seen this before. There's a few additions to it. So I'll put the recommendation on the floor if somebody wants to move it, that CAC recommends the November 24th, 2025 meeting of council to approve traffic calming policy 101. Anybody? Councillor Baker? Okay, and a seconder? Okay, Councillor Savage. So Councillor Baker and Councillor Savage is a seconder. Is there any discussion on that? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor, through you to the CAO. So there were just a couple of items in this CAO, and thanks very much for taking it back and doing more work on it. There's a section in there where you talk about, or where it's talked about, the strategic plan had not been completed yet. I'm assuming that's just a carryover from last month before it was ratified at the end of the month, last month.
Yes, correct, yep.
Okay, and then under section 5, requests for addition or removal of traffic calming. So also, I'll preface it by saying that I'm in support of the speed bumps. I think that probably makes the most sense in this community. So only streets that are recognized as high traffic areas shall be eligible for traffic calming measures. I had issue with that one back in September, I guess it would have been, and I still have issue with that now. I don't know that there are many streets in subdivisions that would see 500 vehicles go down that street. I could be wrong, but I feel like I'm probably not. So I struggle with having that one in there. Everything else I'm fairly comfortable with. But I would prefer to see that taken out so that it's not just around the 500 cars. That's my own. So that's not really a question. It's more of a comment that I would like to see that struck. Thank you. Councillor Baker.
I've got to echo what my colleague says, and I'm trying to understand, CAO, the value of assigning a definition of a traffic count by volume rather than by speed. Because when I look at Halifax's map, it's arterial type of roads through subdivisions that are defined by the role of the road. And also they've done speed studies on those roads. And for lack of speed studies, is there a record of speed infractions in subdivisions that might be available that would inform those?
There would not be, to my knowledge.
So I would support what my colleague is saying, that we're looking at, or maybe I should ask Chief Smith. Sorry, I got the eyeball.
As far as the infractions and subdivisions, we have done in the past where we've had issues and numerous complaints, we'll do some speed studies, yes. We've gone as far, but now to find those might be a different thing because they might be purged from our system. And when I say speed study, I mean members attending, like we've had issues with Oak Dean, with Chester, with Prospect.
Yeah.
A lot of places we put speed signs years ago, right? So speed signs were put in McDougall Heights, which studies were done and they shown that the speeds weren't high. It's, a lot of times it's a perception thing on what people think is the speed, especially in spaces like McDougall Heights or Oak Dean Avenue where it's closed in, right? So, yeah, and as far as traffic count, it's hard to say. I would suggest that's probably gonna be a Dave Bell question, because he's the traffic authority.
Okay.
But yeah, we have done them, and we do typically find that, you're always gonna get the odd person speeding, but typically it's perception a lot of the time. Yeah.
Thank you. May I have follow-up?
Sure.
Sure. Director Bell, so, I'll wait till you come on up.
Sure thing.
Is there a way to define a street's role in a subdivision as a thoroughfare or an arterial, or are they classified by road rather than just our main highways and our subdivision
Yeah, we
roads?
certainly do have, through the chair to you, Counselor, the McDougall Heights, as a good example, has a mixture. Acadia Drive, even though it is currently a long street with a few side roads off it that ultimately ends at the end of the pavement, it is a local collector road, or a minor, I said that wrong. It's a minor collector, so there's minor and major. Chester Avenue would be a major. The subdivision roads off of, say, Chester, McDonald Avenue as an example, that's a local road. All the roads out in Bonavista are local roads. They are local streets, typically residential streets. Collector roads not necessarily have higher speed limits. We still try to keep them at 50 or less, and there has been some advancements with what we can do now with the speed limits. So we are looking at, we used to be essentially stuck at the provincial limit of 50, but there have been some changes provincially to that. So you can post lower limits now, I think down to 40. And as Chief Smith says, we've circulated, certainly the portable radar signs around, a fair bit in the past. They've stayed, the last couple of years, stayed more in the areas that have had the higher traffic, like coming down Main Street, and certainly Main Street is a different classification again, Main Street, Park Street. But we've got them on coming down Burger Hill and out on Park Street at the west end of town, those signs. But I'm trying to get back to the question, I guess, and certainly we have different classifications, and some of that dictates, those classifications can dictate the width of the road, and what's required on them, such as sidewalks and that sort of thing, where we have them on collector roads and not on local roads. And again, Acadia's been a good example, because going forward, that any expansion has to follow an updated standard that includes bike lanes and sidewalks, and we'll be doing similar in the coming years on the existing portions of Acadia Drive to make that collector road compliant to our standards. But speed-wise, there's not a lot of difference, other than the number one highway having portions that are posted at 60 versus downtown number one that's posted at 50. But that's, again, I'm not sure I'm answering your full question, Councillor.
You did, thank you. The classification of roads, I appreciate that.
For sure, yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Andrew.
Thank you. Through the mayor. I would just say that, as was mentioned, we do have something at our disposal that we didn't before, and that is the ability to have a lower speed limit in residential areas, for sure. And I guess my thought is that it would make sense in terms of being cost effective, and something we could explore would be to implement that, along with perhaps, because I seem to recall reports, historically, that coupled with some enforcement, if our residential areas were slowed down to 40, that just would seemingly change the whole rhythm of things, at least if you're going out that way. I know the challenge when you're coming from off the highway, and it's awfully hard, but I do I won't say where, but I do sometimes envision, a car with lights on top. And just the thought of that reminds me as I come into Kentville off the highway, that maybe I should slow down now. And so it's helpful for me. So that would be my kind of thought on this is, let's try that. We have the opportunity to lower some speed limits, and that combined with, and it probably 'tis the season to be up in enforcement anyway. So those two things, I think, that's my thought before we look at spending money on something else, to try those.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Kroll.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to be voting against this motion because traffic calming on our side streets isn't supported by evidence or need, in my opinion. Installing speed bumps and similar measures it's going to cost money, and it's going to cause some noise and inconvenience for residents without improving safety. If there is concern about speed, I like Councillor Andrews' suggestion, but also options like children at play signage or painting slow down on markings on the pavement would be more cost effective and probably just as successful in doing its job.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I have a tendency to agree with the deputy mayor. I think the cost isn't justified, or I haven't seen any justification for the cost to go into speed bumps or anything like that. I know that time and time again, when I was on police commission, this was brought up about speeding, and constantly we're told that those studies are done, just as the chief said, and it's a matter of perception. I might think a car is going 70 and really it's only going 40. And, so it's a matter of perception more so than actual speeding going on. And I'm a firm believer, if you're in a subdivision, you know who's speeding in your subdivision, and why not just go and talk to the person? That's the most effective thing, and I think some of the things that the deputy mayor mentioned and Councillor Andrew mentioned, those are good suggestions, and maybe placing more of the actual flashing signs around might be a good idea as well. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We've all spoken. I'll just chime in. If you look in your report, 49 municipalities, there's information pertaining to each of them. 6 of them have some kind of traffic calming measure, whether it's a speed bump or, that kind of tells you quite a bit. The other part of it too, it's not just the cost to implement the speed bump, it's also the cost to get you to that point, to get an answer, because you're gonna have to have a traffic study. And that could be endless, right? That could be that can add up pretty quickly when you have people requesting that. So I think I have to agree with not supporting this tonight myself. So we've all spoken. I will call for the question. The motion was already put on the floor, so we will open the floor to voting. And voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion has failed, but you meant to vote no, right?
Yes, I did.
Maybe I should read them one more time before we tried a different way tonight.
Yeah, I put my finger
All right, so you meant to vote no?
Yes, I did.
Okay, it's defeated regardless, but we'll make sure that you're
Yes.
annotated as a no.
Yeah, as a no.
Okay. We move on now to Flag Policy 102. Before I put that on the floor, are there any questions about this report? No questions about the Flag Policy Report? Okay, so I'll put the recommendation on the floor. Is the Council Advisory Committee recommend to the November 24th, 2025 meeting of Council to approve Flag Policy 102? Someone could move that. Deputy Mayor Kroll and a seconder. Councillor Maxwell. Any discussion on that? No discussion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Maxwell.
Yes. I'm just so glad to see this here. It's taken 9 years for me to see a policy that would make our center of government show inclusion. And I just want to thank the CAO for the work on this. And I don't believe you can have inclusion in any community until your center of government shows that inclusion and diversity by flying the flags of special groups, any group that wants to have their flag flown. I think it's important. So thank you, CAO.
Thank you. Councillor Savage.
Through you, Mayor, to the CAO. Section 7, the flag request review. So is that something, CAO, that was from another town or municipality, or is that just something that you came up with? I'm just wondering about that piece of it.
Written from scratch.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we will open the floor to voting now. The recommendation is that Council Advisory Committee recommends the November 24th, 2025 meeting of Council to approve Flag Policy 102, and voting is open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. The next item is Reduced Taxation Bylaw 202. This report was in your package. Any questions regarding this report? No questions? So the recommendation is that Council Advisory Committee recommend to the November 24th, 2025 meeting of Council to give first reading to Bylaw 202. Deputy Mayor Kroll and a seconder, Councillor Andrew. Any discussion on this? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor, through you to the CAO. So this was on the many agendas from the past 8 years. I'm sure Councillor Maxwell would remember, and Zabian would remember, probably Councillor Andrew would. So I'm just curious as to how it can come together so simplistic in nature when it took
Years and years and years and years.
literally 8 years.
You're giving him a compliment.
Yes, you can take it as one.
It's not done yet.
It just seems to me like there were so many, and I don't recall, and I tried to look it up last night, like what the issues were, but I believe a few times it was our solicitor that had come forward and said that there were issues, or there was rationale as to why we couldn't do it. So I just need some perspective on that, if that is a fair question, maybe.
The legislation's there, it's in the report and in the other documents. I think there's been some other discussion previously where people started going in different directions like an octopus and not necessarily focusing on what the issue was.
Okay.
And creating issues where there weren't issues.
Okay.
My brief discussion with our solicitor several months ago said that this was fine. He didn't understand why it didn't go through or what the issue was, so.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what if there was other legal involvement, I'm not sure. I know the file was thick, there was lots of reports done,
Yes.
lots of detail, but it's,
Yeah,
from my perspective, it's pretty straightforward.
okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so we will open the floor. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. The next report is on proposed sanitary sewer bylaw 203, regulation of connecting and discharging to town sewer system. Any questions about this report? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor, through you to probably to the CAO, I guess. Sort of, where does this one come from?
From scratch.
Like, the context of it, I mean. I read through it a few times, actually, and I'm just, were there, and maybe it's Director Bell, I don't know, but were there issues with the regulations around connecting and just discharging, or?
No, so what the report highlights is the actual bylaw that's being proposed is for all intents and purposes identical with a few grammatical changes.
Yeah.
As the current bylaw, what's been changed is the fees.
Right.
So council recently passed a motion to change the fees.
The sand sewer,
So the
okay.
bylaw has to be changed to reflect those new fees. So this is simply
That's it.
ratifying the new fee
Okay.
structure.
Okay, that makes sense to me then. Yep, great, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you to the CAO. I kind of understand this, but I'm not sure if it applies to mostly businesses or if it's residential or whatever. But I know in this town there's many homes that were built, quite a while ago, 1950s and maybe earlier, that operate sump pumps that go into the sewer system rather than out into the stormwater. And I'm just thinking that's quite a big expense if you're asking a homeowner to then dig up around their property and get that underground water and move it out into the storm sewer. Is there grandfathering here for those homes? Because there's more than one or two.
I don't think any of that changed, nothing in the document changed in that, yeah.
I'd have to
Here comes
pass that to Director
Bell.
Bell. That's a technical question, so.
Yeah.
No changes have been made to the bylaw to reflect that, Councillor.
Okay.
Certainly, we would rather see all stormwater, all clean water, clear water, if you will, go to the storm sewer if available, and new homes certainly do have to do that. There are several, as you mentioned, older homes that either there wasn't a storm sewer at the time, or, it was, a lot of cases, the older storm sewers were shallower, and you just couldn't get it. Obviously, with a pump, you can pump it up to a higher one. There's certainly no immediate plans to make any enforcement or changes to that. But at the same time, we certainly do see a huge increase in wastewater that we have to pump during a storm event to New Minas to treat, which is, essentially much clearer water and not wastewater. And it's less about the sump pumps, honestly, it's more about roof drains and things that should not be tied in, and they are difficult in either situation. They shouldn't be tied into storm sewers either. They should discharge on top of the ground, because they will quickly overwhelm, a storm system on a local street, because it's certainly not meant to have everybody's rooftops tied into storm sewers. But no changes in how we certainly plan to enforce that at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the recommendation is the Council Advisory Committee recommend to the November 24th meeting of council to give first reading to bylaw 203 respecting regulation of connecting and discharging to town sewer system. Someone could move that. Deputy Mayor Kroll and a seconder. Councillor Savage. Any discussion? No discussion. The question's been asked. We will open the floor to voting right now. And voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Move on to 5E, which is land use bylaw amendment, concurrent construction and conditional permitting. I'll open the floor to Director Shoup if you want to. Most of us, I think, were here for that public participation meeting, but.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have some new visuals to add to that presentation, which hopefully will be helpful.
Okay.
So it won't be too much of a repeat. Just give me 1 second. Excuse me. So thank you, Your Worship. We're bringing this forward as a sort of introductory report to CAC based on that PPM from last week, October 27th, for early permitting. Excuse me. So the purpose of the application is to consider land use bylaw amendment allowing conditional permits prior to final subdivision approval. So it's potentially a break from what we currently do in our current process. And the why to this is that the hope is to improve development efficiency while maintaining what we do for municipal oversight and servicing standards too, and make sure those are upheld. The application actually comes from Bryson Developments, so it's not staff initiated. It's a text amendment, which would apply town-wide, so it's not site-specific either. And the nature of this application is that would primarily benefit larger multi-lot developers who can meet the administrative and financial requirements for concurrent construction. So the current town practice is that permits can only be issued after final subdivision approval. Infrastructure at that point must be fully constructed and accepted. And the typical timeline, and these are very round numbers, but we try to put some sense to them, for 8 to 14 months before housing construction can begin. And then these, as I mentioned, subject to specific application factors such as road construction, timelines and different timelines within that specific development. And the result can be that there are delays to construction, additional carrying costs taken on by the developer, and overall reduced responsiveness to housing demand because of the time factor involved. So the proposed framework, and we'll work through a scenario here in a moment or two, the tentative subdivision approval would first, as well as a tentative agreement, would be executed off the top. Conditional permits would be issued for select lots, which would be identified in the tentative agreement. This would allow for the concurrent construction of both dwellings and infrastructure, and final occupancy and approval, final approval and occupancy only after servicing is complete and accepted. So there's a break put on the developer before they'd be getting occupancy permits. And the potential savings in terms of time for allowing them to get housing on the market with potentially 6 to 8, 12, 10 months earlier start for construction and getting units to the market. All right, so I'm going to quick drink of water for this. These are enhanced visuals, thanks to the planning staff, not me. So what we're seeing here is a lot. Basically, we have a road frontage on the left-hand side in gray, and the green in the bottom is potential parkland. And the multicolored lines are servicing lines.
Much better visuals.
Now they're good.
Yeah. This is the show. So for tentative approval, they can begin construction of services with tentative approval provided. And this expires after 2 years, so they have to have those completed within 2 years for this. And this, I should note, this is for a non-phased development as well. We have a phased development one, which gets a little more complicated later, but we'll start with the simple one. So once primary services are fully constructed, final approval can be obtained. Individual lots are approved. The town would take ownership of the road and any parkland associated with this development. There's timelines set around secondary services, as well as performance and maintenance securities are taken at that point, and they're all set out through the subdivision agreement, which would be entered into at that point as well. The red dot at the end is a fire hydrant, by the way, in case anyone was wondering. So after final subdivision approval, the developer can then apply for permits and begin construction. Once dwellings are fully constructed, then they can apply for occupancy permits. So contrast the current process with the proposed process, again, for a more simple single-phase development. Same blank slate to start. A developer would, under the proposed process, would submit a subdivision plan for tentative approval, where lots and services are established. Once approved, the tentative agreement can be entered into. So in this tentative approval, conditional permits would be issued. Services and road and dwellings can be constructed concurrently. I'm showing the process of construction here through time lapse. So, and when we get to final approval, once final approval is obtained, individual lots would be approved. The town would again take ownership of road and any parkland associated. Then occupancy permits for dwellings would be issued. Now, slightly more complicated version. This is based on partially some of the phasing amendments that the council's made recently. So we're trying to conceive of larger developments happening in town in ways where we can facilitate them through amending our documents. For a multi-phase development, tentative approval would again be obtained, and it's valid for 2 years, same as currently. A phasing agreement, which is a new thing that we brought up through the last set of amendments, would be entered into, and financial security would be received for 100% of the value of the full construction of all infrastructure involved. So if a tentative agreement, and a tentative agreement would be an optional discretionary application for a developer, construction can occur during tentative approval as outlined in the agreement, with occupancy being withheld until final approval is granted. So occupancy permits being the ultimate card in this not really a game, but it's a something. So under first phase, they would achieve final approval as set out in the phasing agreement. And based on this very symmetrical phasing plan, 25% of the phasing would be, of that 100% that we took originally, would then be released. There'd be a 10% maintenance bond, which we would collect for this first phase, as well as 120% performance bond due if they hadn't completed secondary service. So if they completed secondary service, it would just be the maintenance bond. And the remaining 75% of the phasing security would be retained at this point. So basically, and it's still at the tentative approval process for the remaining 3 phases. So we step along this timeline, or street as it were, and at this point we moved it another 25%. So we would release the other next 25% of the phasing security. We would add an additional 10% for this portion of the road and all services, as well as the performance bond if they hadn't completed secondary services. And we would retain 50% of the overall phasing security at that point. So hopefully those graphics are a little more helpful in me trying to do it through words last time, but we'll see with your questions. In terms of policy, we have a couple of policy mentions here, GD4B in particular, where we would like to, council would like to focus residential growth and serviced areas under the banner of efficiency and cost effectiveness. It also is in tune with the provincial statement of interest on infrastructure, the efficient use of existing systems, and reinforces council's new priorities of growth and development, infrastructure, and accountability, which were mentioned in the staff report. In terms of it being aligned with best practices, it overall would promote more timely and efficient housing delivery, integrate servicing oversight. It integrates servicing oversight and development activity again, so that we're staying on top of things and representing the taxpayer well. Upholds the rigor of the building inspection process through tentative agreements and occupancy controls, and reinforces interdepartmental coordination between planning, engineering, and building and finance as well, because there's some financial instruments in this, as I'd alluded to earlier. With respect to some of the benefits, kind of recapping at this point, so it could potentially accelerate housing delivery for those who would opt to partake in this. From the developer's point of view, it would improve their project cash flow and allow them to be more responsive to the market, potentially making the town more attractive for development. It encourages, as we tried to do with the phasing amendments recently, encourages phase coordinated services. And I just said it right now, so it complements what we just achieved with the phasing amendments, providing a more unified framework for permit release and securities are coordinated with appropriate subdivision phases. So in terms of safeguards to make sure that this is being done properly, we do have the new tentative agreement, which would take shape as part of this process. Phase building permit release schedule, which would be part of that as well. Again, occupancy would be held until the appropriate servicing levels are delivered, and this would be done through a process of ongoing inspection and coordinating. So overall, I mean, there's more of a, on the staff side, there's more to uphold going through this, but again, there's some trade-offs with this as well. So there's more coordination, but potentially better results for developers and a more development-friendly environment overall. So the next steps we've laid out here, potentially for first reading on the 24th, depending on what the thoughts are tonight. We would note that we're in consultation with building officials, so getting their feedback on this would be important. I'm understanding that Kings is looking at a similar process, not perhaps at this scale, but that may help us in working out some of the workflows that we would have to consider. Also, if we're talking about a new phasing agreement, what's the name of the agreement for this one? Tentative agreement, thank you. That we would want to run that through legal before we get to a final stage as well. That being said, I think that's our last slide. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Director Shoup? Deputy Mayor Kroll.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the report. It's a lot, and it sounds really good. I think I heard you mention 2 years, a 2-year validity of this application. So what does it apply to? Does that apply to the developer has to start within 2 years, or does it mean that he has to have it finished in 2 years?
For tentative subdivision, I believe that was with reference to.
Yes,
My understanding is that they have to have it finished within 2 years.
okay.
Is that delivery primary? Is it primary and secondary services? Primary. It's primary, and the secondary would come under the bond, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for that, Director Shoup. It looks like we're moving in the right direction. My concern is, like you mentioned, that staff would have to take on certain things. Is there a need for increased staffing, our own building inspector, workflow management software, whatever the forecasted needs in order to make this happen?
We're looking at it under our current staff cohort and our agreement with the county to see how well it could be facilitated. And we'll work that out first before determining whether anything additional would be required.
Thank you.
Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Baker mentioned one of my questions was around if we could handle this in-house. So you've responded to that. And you said that the 120% bond related to secondary? Yeah. I guess one of a couple of the questions I would ask would be essentially what are the risks, I guess, of doing this? And certainly this does benefit the developer and is an attraction piece for Kentville, so that's great. Have we run this by our solicitor? I'm assuming that we have, and I'd be interested to know the opinion of Director Bell on this. So those are my questions.
I'll lead off before Director Bell gets up here.
Okay.
In terms of risks, I think we've touched on it a little bit with it's an increased process load, basically. So we just want to ensure that we are able to properly administer and monitor these different for the multi-phase ones. They get quite complicated, so making sure that we have good checklists and processes in place, and that would be discussions with multiple departments to get there. In terms of legal, we have not had it run by legal yet in terms of the agreement, and have not heard any comments yet from our solicitor, but it's something I would probably prefer to hear before we get too far down the line with this as well.
Yeah.
I'll just give it over to Director Bell.
I guess the question, Councillor, was what do I feel about the risk to us? Or I think the most of the risk is really to the builder. It is more of a risk that they haven't subdivided or made official lots yet, but they may have through us development permits and then ultimately building permits with the county, and they have houses under construction, perhaps not completed, but at that time with concurrent finishing of the subdivision, they really can't sell the houses or sell a lot or give a PID or a deed until they're done. So it's their risk to make sure that the foundation's in the right place, and if they got it too close to a line that doesn't really exist yet, again, it's their risk and less to us. I don't see, at least from my department's perspective, any real challenges or risks. Take some certainly work with Darren's department to make sure it's all working with our team and our agreement with the county. But that would seem to be the biggest hurdle, to make sure that the building inspectors can continue to do their phased inspections along the different levels of from footing to framing to drywall to plumbing and all that along the way, while they're also maybe finishing and building roads and going through the other steps. It seems to take a long time to get from the point when the road looks complete, yet still takes months of some legal back and forths with the municipality's lawyers and the developer's lawyers. And by the time that's all said and done, you've almost wasted another construction season before you can actually build a house under the current rules and regs. But this would allow them to at least get building while they're finishing mostly the red tape. Because practically they're not going to build a house or even a foundation while they're in there with the rough earth moving. It's later on when they're all the deep services are in, but there's still work, or at least a lot of legal work to do to get that road turned over to the town, and it could happen before it's curbed and paved. And that's the way we used to always do things, was we'd take over a road at a gravel level before we before it was curbed and paved, and the town took on that burden and expense, I guess, and charged curbing back to the individual lot owners at the time as a betterment charge. But under our current requirements, it has to be curbed and paved and right to the secondary. That's the only thing that can be bonded is the secondary, which, as we clarified a few months ago, the secondary includes, the main thing it includes now is the top coat of pavement, which can be bonded for that 120%.
Okay.
Other things too, walkways if required, walkways or sidewalks, and
Okay.
line painting and things like that, I think are secondary and bondable. But
Okay.
everything else is still the same way for us.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Baker.
Director Bell, if I can just ask you one more thing, just from a practical point of view, when we build a non-phased subdivision, you have, I'm assuming, one on and off of infrastructure, whereas if we now break, because the whole road would be constructed, the whole infrastructure underneath the road is constructed, then there's an on and off. But what we're looking at now is turning services on and off somewhere out in the greater community for that road, are we not? And if so, what would the real, practical day-to-day for a Kentville resident who's just outside of that subdivision look like if we're turning on and off the water,
Right.
sewer access, that kind of stuff?
It's rare to even see a subdivision today that isn't built in phases. I mean, I can't think of many. It would have to be a very short and finite little cul-de-sac type of street. But with, even to fund it, and I'm not answering your question yet, but I guess I will get to it. Most subdivisions are phased, in order to open up the first little bit, can be the easiest way to get cash flow and get lots developed. From the on and off, as you mentioned, certainly water being the biggest component of phasing, and you have to design it properly, from the get-go, that you can, if you're building Darren's, perfect model there that had 4 phases, each 25% of the overall development. Every phase would have to have its own, end-of-line valve, and then you're ready to start the next phase and so on. So, the disruptions are never none, but they can be reduced or mitigated to near none if you design it right in the first place. And that's the things we look for now when, if we do receive a plan. McDougall Heights has been a great one because it has had numerous phases over the years and different developers, and you always have to leave that next phase ready to go for the next phase, next developer, maybe even if it isn't even commonly owned, which lots of those developments up there have been different developers. They have to end that phase with a valve and a manhole and things like that to minimize the disruption to existing services. Hope that was your question.
That answers the question.
Very good.
Thank you, Director Bell.
All right, I guess there's no more questions. I'll put the recommendation on the floor. The Council Advisory Committee recommended the November 24th, 2025 meeting of council that council give first reading to the proposed land use bylaw amendment permitting conditional issuance of building permits within subdivision under a servicing agreement that council requests staff to schedule a public hearing prior to second reading. Councillor Savage and a seconder, Councillor Maxwell. Is there any discussion on that? Well, voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Welcome Director Shoup back up for your next report.
So second report is on, get my language right here. So we're looking at different forms of housing, in particular program-based housing. That's the term I couldn't think of. It's a discussion on that basically and some recommendations on how that could be considered going forward. So the purpose it's a briefing basically the CAC on proposed planning updates to clarify how Kentville regulates supportive transitional and emergency housing. And sort of the key message that we want to bring forward as a planning department, as the review focuses on how this can happen across town. We're not looking at any specific project and during the discussion of my report, just as a note. So what we've been witnessing over the last probably 8 years, probably increased frequency, there's a broader range of housing models that are emerging, which include supportive, transitional, and emergency housing. The current land use bylaw lacks clear definitions, and that's led to some inconsistent interpretation of how developments have been considered since it began in 2019. We looked at some of the provincial direction on how this could be considered as well, and they cite modernization and streamlining of local frameworks and a variety of reports there. In the Action for Housing report brought out by the provincial government in 2023 speaks specifically to helping moving people from experiencing homelessness into better housing situations. Also note here, and I believe one of the councillors asked this during an earlier report, in terms of local conditions, this is from the 2022 Housing Needs Assessment. At that point in time, we're looking at 0.8% vacancy, approximately 50 unhoused individuals. I would suspect that's gone up since 2022, without having a firm number to point at, and a 385 unit shortfall by 2027, which was the prognosis at the time. In terms of planning intent, part of what we do as a planning department is we would like to recognize essential housing forms without stigma, of course, and to maintain an inclusion, and some of the thoughts that we went through when we were putting this together, maintain inclusion between inclusion overall and downtown vitality. There's a couple of tools that we can use based on policies IM7C, which is adjacency, which we'll explain a little bit more shortly, and policy GD30 on site plan approval. And the goal is to ensure a predictable, transparent review process when things are coming into the planning department, when there's applications coming in. And also to assign program-based housing to an appropriate land use designation where it's currently not considered, to enable it as a permitted use within the planning framework. So it fits in somewhere into the town's scheme of things. And just replicated the CMHC's housing continuum, just to give a sense of where these program-based housing that we're looking at defining tonight, where they fit into the big picture. Key proposed changes. So we're looking to define program-based housing as sort of an umbrella term, and then have sub-terms for supportive housing, transitional housing, and emergency housing. Looking to refine some of the related terms that are currently in the land use bylaw, including institution, and emergency services, and also sleeping room, which is a term that appears later as well. And again, reiterating the fact that we want to assign program-based housing to an appropriate land use designation to formally establish it as a permitted residential use. And we've suggested that the R3 zone may be the appropriate zone to place that in. Different municipalities, and in the report there's some discussion on how different towns have looked at these various forms of housing. Some of them see that it's more of an institutional use, some residential. But we're starting with R3, and we'll get into the details of some of the criteria that would be looked at shortly, but capping, potentially capping it at 12 units or rooms per lot would be one way to go. Also looking at, again, mentioning these two policies that come into play, and we'll get into more details on them here. This IM7 with the adjacency would allow for rezonings and C1 adjacent properties. So if there's C1, which are adjacent to residential designated properties, they could be considered for adjacency. And also, for a slightly different note, the GD30 policy for site plan approval, that would be in place for any potential developments that would look to locate next to an R1 or an R2 zone. So they'd have to go through a site plan approval process. So how this works, in R3, the development officer issues a permit if the site plan approval standards are met as follows, and this is our proposed set. So a maximum of 12 units or sleeping rooms per lot, and the definitions all appear in that report. minimum 60-meter separation between program-based housing uses. We would look to have a residential form and scale appropriate to, or consistent with surrounding dwellings, adequate on-site parking, lighting and screening, buffered outdoor amenity, gathering areas adjacent to residential properties, and no exterior signage identifying client type or program. So these are somewhat modified from the sort of general site plan approval standards that we would have for residential, is what we're suggesting. And again, also noting a little more detail on GD 30, that for developments in R3, R4, or C1, so we'd be focusing on R1, R3 rather, that about R1 or R2, that we apply those site plan approval standards. So how it could happen in C1, again, item 7C speaks to adjacency. And so we'll be looking to, so if it's adjacent to a residential designation, a C1, current C1 zone property could be considered for rezoning to R3, and the same buffering and design standards would apply in that case. Again, coming back to some of the comparatives that we looked at and some of the direction that we took from the province, that we've tried to keep consistent with what the Statement of Provincial Interest on Housing states, and also some of the other studies coming from the province. Informed from a range of approaches from across Nova Scotia, including Amherst, Yarmouth, Lunenburg, Bridgewater, and Wolfville, and to take some of their lessons and apply them to what we could do in Kentville. And going back to the strategic priorities, we're looking at keeping it in line with what Council has directed us with in terms of growth and development, equity and inclusion, as well as partnerships and accountability. So while the definitions are there, I just want to quickly mention a few more of them. I stated earlier, the program-based housing overall encompasses the support of transitional or emergency residential uses. We're adapting or refining our institution definition to more specifically look at civic, educational, health, or community facilities. It's been quite broad, and it's currently quite broad. Emergency services, again, more focused on police, fire, ambulance, and dispatch services. Again, more of a focused definition for that. And the sleeping room definition, we mentioned the sleeping area without a kitchen, and we're looking to count that for density when we're examining how some of these developments could work. The benefits of this new framework is that it provides clarity and by giving definition to things which have to date been undefined, and allows for a little more interpretive ability for the development officers to consider going forward. We're trying to work in a sense of balance where these uses are included within the town's boundaries and where they would be appropriately established, and at the same time recognizing the nature of the C1 zone and the commercial vitality that was envisaged by council in policy. Transparency, we want to underline the idea of transparency. These two policies offer predictable review for any potential applicants, and again, alignment in that we're trying to do our best to stay in keeping with what provincial policy and some of the other towns of similar size have done across the province. So given that this is the first real introduction tonight, we'd be looking to move forward if council deems it appropriate on what these are all subject to tonight's discussion. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have on this matter.
Thank you very much, Director Shoup. Any questions for Director Shoup based on this? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Director Shoup. I have some questions. First of all, I'd like to know what the definition of an emergency shelter is.
I did bring those along, so the way we have it defined in the report is that it's a short-term accommodation with basic supports and stays of typically less than 30 days.
So if we're looking at shelters for homeless, then it would fall under emergency shelter, is that correct?
It would require, from my point of view, we need to get a better understanding of how these services are delivered to make sure that these definitions are working as well. These are the first attempt by the department to set some standards, but a greater understanding would be great, would probably be appropriate for this moving forward as well.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you. Supportive housing, transitional housing, both of those types of housing have 24/7 supervision in those situations, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
But emergency shelter doesn't have 24/7.
I would want to confirm that with one of the providers before speaking
Okay.
too far into that.
Okay, so I'm going to need an answer to that question.
And I don't know, sorry, I don't know if supportive housing has 24-hour. I don't believe that's,
Supportive housing, I'd like to know what supportive housing
Yeah,
is.
I don't
I'm
think
thinking
they have 20.
small option homes is supportive housing, and I'm thinking like homes with people who are mentally or physically disabled and they have caregivers with them all the time, or like
my understanding from conversations about this is that supportive housing may have a check-in, but not necessarily 24-hour.
Yeah.
But every situation could vary, so.
Any that I've been around, they do have people there all the time. So I would like to have more information on that as well. So basically what we're trying to do is say that we'll make sure that those types of housing then are placed closer to an R3 residential zone. So we're looking at making sure that, or we're placing those around the town in residential areas. And I have a hesitancy there. I don't have any hesitancy with supportive housing. I have none with transitional housing. But I do have a hesitancy with emergency shelters going into residential areas. And so I need more clarification on that. I think, when you're reading about issues that might surround those types of things, whether it be that in Halifax or other large areas, those types of issues that are centered where they're seeing those issues, then we're going to put those out into residential areas. And I'm really hesitant about doing that. And I need way more information before I can make a decision on something like this.
Just say from just my own experience, and I know there's, some of this is on a, there's some latitude in terms of how these things are articulated. But I will stay with supportive housing. I know that for 6 or 7 years, I was involved in running a program in Kentville. And one of the things we were proud of, so this was not fully supervised. So you would have had check-ins, you would have had one-on-one accountability, you would have had people checking in on the condition of the property, and what I will say is it can work well, and it did work well, and in a couple of cases, the neighbors were either very favorable or surprised after a year went by and they discovered that was what was happening, but it took a real intentionality to make that happen. In terms of emergency shelter, I of course am involved with an emergency shelter, and it happens in a church, so that might be a little bit different of a, and that is always supervised by 2 or 3 people at all times, or it's not open. So I transitional housing has been, we called what we did transitional housing, but I think when I understand what transitional housing, that would be something with a higher level of support, and I think that's what we see more often than not. So that's just what I've experienced, and it's not necessarily an answer even. If I can
It matches what my familiarity is with, and I'm just hesitant to say right now that I am willing to place an emergency shelter on a border between a C1 and an R3 zone. In other words, they could go into that residential area, and I have a real issue with that. None with the other two. None with the other two. I've seen them work. supportive housing and transitional housing in residential areas. I've seen those work, and I've seen, you know, that there's no problems or no issues there, but I'm very hesitant on the other.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Director, for bringing this forward, because I appreciate the clarification that is needed for these different definitions, but also on how we approach it. Speaking of which, I'm not familiar enough with IM7C. So that is the R3 zone, applying for IM7C for adjacent rezonings. Can you enlighten me on what that is?
Jump back. So the way it's written in policies, it authorizes councils to consider rezoning where the land is to be rezoned as adjacent to a designation that permits the proposed use. So in this case, if we're talking about the borderline between the C1 and a residential designation, because if the amendment is made, these program-based housing situations could be considered in that residential designation. So again, a designation is slightly different than a land use, but the land uses are encompassed under a designation. So if it's adjacent to any residential designation, then it would be permitted to be considered for a rezoning at that time.
Okay, and if I may add, just on another tangent, where do faith-based organizations, because my colleague noted, fall in under these definitions? I don't see anything for faith-based organizations or churches, and how that definition can be extended.
Again, that goes under probably the category of having better understanding how the services are delivered. We currently, I'm thinking that we zone them, they have been zoned institutional in the past. Is that correct?
Yeah, places of worship.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so places of worship have been zoned institutional. So unless there have been any new that have appeared since 2019, that's how it would be covered at this point in time.
So it's still under institution then?
It would be under an institutional use.
Okay, thank you.
So to that respect, if we're looking to change the definition of institution, we should be taking into account what's currently happening in faith-based locations as well.
So, and one more, if your worship. Speaking of emergency shelters, if an emergency service, such as the Kentville Volunteer Fire Department, provides an emergency shelter as per REMO requirements or agreements, is that considered an emergency shelter if an emergency lasts longer than 30 days, or do they have to renew it?
That's another thing that we have discussed. My thought that it would be considered under what provincial, if there's a local emergency declared at that point, I think that may open it up. I don't know if the CAO has any thoughts on that as well, but there's a different set of rules that apply under an emergency situation.
Yeah, if it was extended, it would probably be under a local state of emergency and the rules don't apply.
Okay.
But in this case, the definition though says it's typically 30 days. So it could be 35, could be 40, based on the situation.
Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the Director. So in the staff report here, it says the reference definitions for future land use bylaw drafting. So it says it's just for discussion purposes and not proposed for inclusion in the MPS. Mm-hmm. So my suggestion would be that, like, let's get standard definitions by virtue of the province, or at least some of the providers that provide these types of housing. I suspect some, if not all of them, are supported by the province, so maybe that would be of help moving forward with this. It's just a thought. So I mean, we're at the point now where we would want to take this and go right to public participation, or are we thinking that we would sort of narrow down some of those definitions?
The timeline that we've laid out in the report would be to go to public participation next, but the council feels different. We can look at that timeline again.
Yeah, I'm just sort of coming back to what Councillor Maxwell said, just in terms of some of these definitions and how some of these shelters and housing and units are defined. I think that's It's just my thought, but maybe the CAO has a thought on that, I don't know.
Just that if you look at the documents from other places, everybody defines them differently.
Is that right?
So
Oh, okay.
there's no clear consensus.
Ah, okay.
Like as Director Bell's, or Director Shoup said, some places have institutional, some have gotten rid of institutional zones, and they're all
Okay.
in a different zone.
Okay,
And the wording is different based on the uses in that particular community, and they've
okay.
evolved over time. So we can go look, but you're probably not gonna get anything consistent that's gonna
Yeah.
be much help.
Okay, so then probably moving forward with that session might, yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
Sorry for that, our door.
okay.
Oh, you did?
Someone,
Someone did, I don't know if they've left now, but, yeah.
sorry.
Sorry.
That's all right, I don't remember what I was, so then probably just going to the public participation meeting, that would probably shed more light and more discussion around. Yep, okay.
I think this report, I want to thank you and your staff because it's very comprehensive and gives a lot of great information. I have one thing that I might like to see in the recommendation if council is okay with it, and I'll ask your opinion too, Director Shoup, where it says apply GD30 site plan approval to manage design compatibility or program-based housing abuts R1 and R2 zones. Could we not say that it would require a development agreement?
May I ask which page you're looking at?
We're on right in the recommendation.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
The last point, the last dot where it says apply GD30 site plan approval.
Your worship, I'm trying to remember which page.
Oh,
we had
the
it mentioned in.
the first page, the recommendation.
Right, in the appendices, we had
Oh.
a note where we could consider developments larger than 12 units by development agreement, but we just have to revise some of the language in there to incorporate
Okay.
that, because it hadn't been considered at that point.
I guess, what I'm wondering is if somebody wants to, if there's a group, whatever, and they're interested in having program-based housing in those R1 or R2 zones, could we not just require a development agreement?
And in R1 and R2,
Yeah, wouldn't,
that would, well, that'd be a different direction than having it rezoned R3, I guess.
Right.
It would be. So that would be a different consideration for us to look at going forward if we wanted to take it there.
Which part are you on?
I'm just in the recommendation itself.
I don't see that in the report here.
In the recommendation or in the, see the recommendation? It should be on the first page, or the one the CEO gave you a little while ago. The last point,
Yeah, the one the CEO.
yeah, where it says apply GD30 site plan approval.
Yes, sir.
Because that wouldn't come to council, that would be the
Redevelopment
would be the development, so the council wouldn't have anything to do with that.
That's right.
So what I'm saying is if we have it so that it's part of a council decision, if it's gonna abut R1 and R2 zones. See what I'm saying?
Why would we make a difference between R1, R2, and then leave R3?
Well, maybe the whole thing should be, maybe I'm saying maybe the whole thing should be development agreement then is what I was
Yeah,
throwing out there.
yeah, even in an R3, they're all residential.
Yes, go ahead, CEO.
Not sure if Director Shoup has it in his pocket or not, but are development agreements appealable?
Do you know off the top of your head? Sorry to put you on the spot. I would have to check that to be 100% sure.
Okay. Because if you want to change the development agreement, you're going to change a lot of language in the act, and you're not going to be ready for the 25th.
Right.
You're going to have to change a lot of different things, and I just worry about development agreements potentially being appealable. Not sure.
Site plan approvals are.
They are, I don't know if development agreements are, site plans are though. I don't know, we've never done any, so I don't know. Yeah, okay. All right, I guess there's no more questions. So the recommendation is that council requests staff to prepare concurrent amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaws substantially as outlined in Appendix D that define program-based housing and its subtypes, supportive, transitional, and emergency shelter, refine related definitions including institution, institutional care facility, and emergency services, permit program-based housing as of right in the R3 zone, applying IM 7 for adjacent rezonings, and applying GD 30 site plan approval to manage design compatibility where program-based housing abuts R1 or R2 zones, and that the draft amendments be brought forward for public review through a public participation meeting under Section 205 of the Municipal Government Act. Someone could move that? Councillor Baker, and a seconder, Councillor Andrew. Any discussion on that? Voting is now open. Oh, sorry, I'm too fast. Councillor
No,
Savage.
that's okay. So I don't feel like I have enough information at this time, or maybe I feel like I have too much information. I'm not sure. So all we're doing tonight is we're moving forward with this recommendation and more information to come forward that would come forward at the public participation meeting. Am I correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, then I'm okay.
Okay, voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. We're now on to policy GO3, which is workplace harassment. Anything you want to speak to that, CEO, or?
I can, yes. The province introduced legislation a short time ago requiring all municipalities in Nova Scotia to have a workplace harassment policy. They just introduced the regulations back in mid-September, I think, and had a deadline at the end of September, which was impossible to meet. But our Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee has talked about it a couple times. Our staff have attended some workshops, gotten some legal advice and legal counsel, and prepared a draft policy as recommended by the Occupational Health and Safety Committee.
Okay. Any questions for the CEO based on that? Okay, so the recommendation is that Council Advisory Committee recommend to the November 24th, 2025 meeting of Council that Council approve policy G103 respecting work harassment policy. Moved by Deputy Mayor Kroll and a seconder, Councillor Savage. Any discussion on that? The vote is now ready. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. We have one piece of correspondence here from Kings Remo in your package. And I'll open the floor to public comments. If there's any member of the public that would like to speak, I invite you up to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Last call. I guess there's nobody. Council has confidential business we need to discuss in camera, so I will take a motion. We will not be returning to YouTube Live after this session, so Councillor Andrew and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Kroll. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. We're in camera at 6:40.